I have to make this quick. It could be any second now. It's outside. I can hear it pounding. The lock won't last much longer. I'm afraid that once it's in, it will never leave again. And neither will I. My name is Andre. It was exactly 24 hours ago that I decided to attempt the man in the fields ritual. I was an atheist and a huge skeptic. I would laugh at anyone who would believe in the Bible, as to me it sounded more or less like fairy tales, and I believed that all those rituals on the internet were complete and utter fucking bullshit. I heard before about the whole Elisa Lam thing that happened 4 years ago, and how people thought she might have been playing the elevator game, but I didn't believe in any of that sort of stuff. Until I decided to mess around with that stuff. You see, it all began on Friday, about 48 hours ago. It was really late at night, but for some reason I couldn't sleep, so I was just online surfing the internet. I don't recall how, but somehow I stumbled onto a website called The Ghost in My Machine, which had a collection of rituals labeled as the most dangerous games on it. The huge skeptic and dickhead that I was, I started to laugh at all these made-up rituals that seemed capable of taking you to another dimension, allowing you to enter your own mind, summon an entity called the Midnight Man, etc. Until one I saw named the Man in the Fields. What really interested me about this one was that it worked best if you had a house in the countryside, preferably with a field of crops out back. That was exactly what I had. Me and my dad live in Somerset, and we have a pretty big farm. Our house is relatively small, but there are fields full of crops spanning about 1 kilometer around our house. The nearest road was a mile away, and it wasn't even a road. It was more like a rocky, half-built pavement that my dad went on every day to take me to school. The actual main road was about 2 miles away, and the nearest motorway 5. So yeah, our house was actually quite secluded. After reading about this ritual, I decided that I would try it, literally just to prove that it was fake and there is no such thing as the paranormal. My dad was out till Monday morning on business meetings and events in London, so I would have the house myself and the perfect opportunity to do so. I eventually managed to fall asleep. Next day I gathered up the items I needed, a lantern, my dad's crucifix, and my analog wristwatch. And around 23:06, I was standing in my backyard facing my house and lighting my lantern. I'm not gonna lie, I felt really stupid doing this, but I forced myself to say the phrase, "But who will scare the crows away?" 7 times. For the first minute or two, I heard and felt absolutely nothing different. Feeling like the biggest retard, I threw the crucifix down onto the floor and started storming back towards my house. Suddenly, I felt something I had never in my life before experienced. A cold breeze blew from the left towards me, and even though I was wearing a thick winter coat, a chill ran down my spine, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It felt like someone or something was behind me, staring at me, but I couldn't move my body. The lantern dropped from my hand and the wind started howling incessantly like an animal. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a deep, raspy voice behind me slowly say, "That's not your biggest problem." Abruptly, everything went silent and back to normal. I could move again. The chill was gone. The wind had stopped howling, and when I turned around there was no one behind me. But the new dead silence wasn't normal. It was the eeriest fucking thing I had ever experienced. It felt like the house, the fields, everything around me was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I don't know how best to describe it, but the silence was just wrong and unnatural. It filled me with a sense of dread. I went back and picked up my crucifix, but when I turned around to face the house, the door was wide open. As soon as I got back in, a wave of terror hit me. Every fucking thing in the house was open. Cupboards, our 2 washing machines, the dishwasher, the oven, the other door leading to the living room, the fridge, Even my dad's wine bottles with their cork lying next to them on the table, everything was open. I was so scared, I vomited on the kitchen floor, only to notice that even my phone, which was turned off charging, was goddamn on. I was now actually kind of pissed off that someone or something had messed up my house like this. Then, I remembered that this was meant to happen. Closing everything that could be open was part of this ritual. After I went and chose my safe room, which was my bedroom, I came back down and began closing everything. I decided to put some music on to calm myself as I went on closing everything in the kitchen, so I went to my laptop and chose a song from Deadpool, Careless Whispers by George Michael. I managed to close everything in the kitchen pretty quickly, and by the time I had closed everything on the ground floor, and I was closing the laptop, it was 23:18, so I still had a whole 40 minutes to close everything on the second floor. As I started up the stairs, I saw a figure standing near the top. It was a man dressed in farmer's clothes, but his skin was ashen and gray, and there was an expression of anger on his face while I looked at him. I remember it saying in the ritual that I was meant to ignore him or something like that, but I kept staring at him for a minute or two. And suddenly, he vanished. But I knew he wasn't gone. Climbing up the stairs, I checked the watch and nearly fainted when I saw the time was 23:53. I had definitely not stared at the farmer guy for more than 2 or 3 minutes, so where the flying fuck had all the time went? I started running and closing everything in a panic. Slamming cupboards shut, closing doors, books, windows, everything. At 23:58, once I was 100% sure everything was closed, I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and following the ritual, closed the last thing. My eyes. I recall I set my alarm clock to ring at 6 a.m. the next day, so after I woke up, I went down to the kitchen and saw the most horrifying thing ever. That shall I survive will never, ever leave me. Outside in the distance, an impossibly tall, elongated scarecrow, which hadn't been there before, seemed to be missing a head, was hanged up on a post, its body full of straw. My body was so cold I might as well have been dead. It then got down from its post and started sprinting towards me, moving unnaturally fast. There was something so fucking terrifying about it, my knees felt like jelly. Honestly, I was looking forward to death at this point as long as I never saw that thing ever again. It was in that second of dread, I remembered that the alarm clock in my room was an hour ahead, and that the time was actually 5 a.m. At first I was paralyzed with fear, as I watched it make its way across the field toward me. I probably didn't stand there for more than 2 or 3 seconds, but they felt like an eternity. When I finally started moving, my movements felt slow and heavy, like I was trying to run through water. As I finally got to the bottom of the stairs, I heard my back door being smashed open and saw bits of wood fly across the living room downstairs as the thing entered my house. At that point, I learned how to climb a set of 20 steps in less than a second. I ran into my safe room gasping with fear and locked the door behind me. Atheist or not, I grabbed the crucifix and started praying to Jesus, Virgin Mary, God, the Holy Ghost, anything really. I heard it start pounding the fucking door, yet somehow it didn't break. And this is where I have been since. For 18 hours, I have been inside my safe room praying, and that thing still hasn't left me. I have heard my father's voice begging me to open the door, yet I know it wasn't him. I have heard the sounds of babies being torn apart at my refusal to open the door, yet I never open. I have even heard a calming woman's voice asking me multiple times to open, claiming she is an angel sent by God to help me, only to hear it turn to a demonic screeching after my refusal. If only I had a knife or gun or something like that, then I would have killed myself, but I can't. I'm afraid this is the end. I have not dared to open or touch anything else, but I can see my lock is wearing out with all the pounding, and it will give in eventually. To anyone who is thinking of doing any rituals like this, please, please do not. For the sake of anyone that loves you and your own, don't. There are things we should never mess with in this world, lest they mess with us. Oh God, I think...
My mom lives in an old farmhouse over 100 years old in North Carolina. The original owner was a doctor, so people have died there. It was owned by the same family for a really long time. It's got a lot of history to it. My mom has experienced a lot in the house, but didn't tell my stepdad for a long time because he's a huge skeptic and she knew he would just dismiss it. She's very religious, but has always been sensitive to the spirit realm. These are the scariest stories, in my opinion. Experience 1. They were having a Bible study in the living room, and they heard a really loud crash from upstairs, interrupting the study. Everyone was downstairs in the Bible study, and they don't have animals. My stepbrother went up to investigate and couldn't find anything. Everyone soon left. My mom was cleaning up, and she heard the guitar playing in the next room. Her husband and his sons were outside, so she went to see who was in there, and the guitar was playing itself, leaned up against the wall. She freaked, ran outside and told my stepdad, but once I came back in, it had stopped. Experience 2. My mom was dreaming that there was a spirit-like entity hovering over her in bed. She woke herself up violently, swatting at it. When she woke up, she said she saw a young girl at the foot of the bed who looked to be pretty beaten or cut up. Experience 3. After the last experience, and small things happening around the house, shit would just disappear. My mom called a friend of hers from church, who is evidently very insightful and sensitive to this sort of thing. I call her a psychic, but they would never call her that in church. She didn't tell her friend anything about the house, just invited her over for lunch, basically to see if this woman picked up on anything without any sort of preface. My mom called her the next day to ask if she sensed anything in the house. She told my mom she wasn't going to come out and say anything because that's scary, but that she definitely felt something dark and heavy in the house. She had gone to bed that night, woke up in the middle of the night, and saw a young girl at the foot of the bed, presumably the same girl my mom saw. She said she looked like she had been operated on or sick, just did not look good. And she just could feel that the girl followed her home from my mom's house. This was enough to get my mom to have the whole church come and bless the house. I think she was really freaked out at this point. We never told my younger sisters because we didn't want to freak them out. Turns out, everyone in town thinks the house is haunted. One of my sister's friends told my sister all of these stories that her mother told her about the house. Evidently, there was a suicide there. My mom looked it up, and it's true. We ended up asking the former owners if they ever experienced anything paranormal, and they said no at first. Then, the wife later contacted my mom and said that they heard laughing children more than once, and it was just her and her husband living in this big house after all their kids had moved out a long time ago. Experience 4. Honorable mention as well. My mom's always been visually sensitive, but I've always had very telling dreams. I feel like family members soon after they've died have visited me through my dreams, but that's another story. I hadn't been to the house at this point and had a dream about it. I was with my sister in her room and could see a dark figure right next to a very small looking closet. My sister begged me to close the closet, and I finally ran over and closed it, but I woke up terrified. I called my mom, and she kept asking me to describe the room. Evidently, I described my youngest sister's room with exact detail, especially the small closet door, which side of the room it's on, the pink wallpapered walls, etc., etc. Interestingly, my youngest sister had been saying she was scared of her room and that she found it creepy, but we hadn't told my sisters anything that was happening in the house so that they wouldn't be scared. I think things still disappear, but the scary occurrences have subsided after blessing the house.
When I was around 14 years old, we owned a house in the suburbs. It was a nice little neighborhood with very little crime. My parents would leave town a lot and leave me with a babysitter who would always take off at night with her boyfriend. My friends would then come over and we would watch music videos all night long on the different video channels until we fell asleep. There was really nothing else to do because everything was closed. Sometimes we would actually sneak out and cause havoc, but since it was really easy to get caught, we didn't do it all of the time. One time that we did sneak out, we ran into a few thugs. They had driven in from the next town over and were stalking our houses. We all ran to the backyard of one of the houses they were entering. We heard some scuffling and a scream. None of us had cell phones at the time, so we couldn't call. And by the time we heard the scream, one of the thugs was standing right near where we were, so we couldn't just take off. We sat there listening to the horrible commotion going on in the house. It was awful. We heard some more screaming and then nothing. We were so scared. The thug nearest to us went inside and we all ran home back to my house. I heard one of them yell out, "Hey, you!" We didn't stop. We ran right inside, and while I locked all of the doors, my friend called the cops. The police were about 45 minutes away from our secluded little area and said that they would get there as soon as possible and not to open any doors for anyone. They asked if there was a place to hide, and I told them yes. We went up to the attic, which is really hard to find in my house because the entryway is in a closet behind a bunch of clothes. We turned off all the lights and ran up to the attic, closing everything behind us. We sat there in silence, a few of us crying, the others shaking in fear. A few minutes later, we heard banging at the door. I knew it wouldn't be the police already, so we sat there waiting. Then right when I realized that we had left the sliding glass door unlocked downstairs, I heard it open and move along the rails. There was movement downstairs in the living room, then in the kitchen. The garage door opened, and then I heard steps creaking up the stairs. "Oh, girls, where are you? Don't you want to come out and play?" We all sat there hunched in our little circle, quiet, cold, and shivering. My friend started to cry, but I put my hand over her mouth. She nodded and stopped. Then the door to the bedroom opened. This was my mom and dad's room. I could hear them searching the drawers under the bed, in the curtains, and then the closet door opened. We all held our breath. We were sitting right above where this creep was standing. One creak in the floor, and we knew we were dead. One sniffle, and he would probably pull us down and kill us all. We waited until they left the room to even breathe. For a moment, we all just sighed and let out a few needed tears of fear, then just sat there. Honestly, I think we really just silently agreed to wait until the cops came. I'm glad we did, because a few minutes later, we heard some clanging of something in the backyard. It went on for about 5 minutes, in the garage, and then in the backyard again, until we heard their car squeal off. A few minutes later, the cops were inside my house searching for us. We climbed down the ladder and into the bedroom. where they comforted us and brought us down to the living room with blankets. One of them made us some hot chocolate, and we all sat and waited for my parents to get home. The cops wouldn't leave until my parents got there. A few minutes later, the cops caught the guys racing down the highway in their cars, but never found any stolen goods. When they asked the crooks where the neighbors were, the crooks just laughed and said they had no idea. The cops couldn't lock them up for murder. We told them about all of the noise in the backyard, but nothing was found. Of course, the babysitter was fired, and I was grounded for leaving the house and not telling my parents about the babysitter leaving all of the time. It wasn't until recently when we found the neighbors, which forced me to send this story in. I was getting ready to take off to college and cleaning out a few of my old things by having a garage sale. I had pretty much put that event in the back of my head until now. Yesterday, I was digging through some old boxes in the old shed when I opened the first one. I screamed so loud that my dad came running immediately. Those freaks had stuffed my neighbors in these boxes and in the most horrible positions. No one found them because these plastic boxes are pretty airtight. The county coroner told us it looked like they were hit over the head and knocked out, then stuffed in plastic bags and in the bins, then suffocated. My poor neighbors. I hope they can find these creeps again. Who knows what other crimes these jerks have committed. Since then, I can't wait to see them punished. If you enjoyed listening to this anonymous story, please give it a thumbs up. Also, you can send in your story to scarystoriesonvideo@gmail.com. Please check the submission guidelines at www.707SpookyBoo22.com before submitting. I would love to hear your story. And subscribe to my channel too. Tell your friends about it so we can all tell scary stories together.
I'm what you might call a big shitter. As you probably guessed by the name, I tend to visit the bathroom a lot. I'm a hygienic fellow, so I always wash up afterwards. The bathroom in my house is a well-furnished room, with a heated floor, jacuzzi, and a fine wooden toilet seat. Directly above the sink where I wash my hands is a large mirror, with a view of the whole bathroom behind me. Like everyone, I tend to look at myself in the mirror for a bit, and arrange my hair in a way I deem suitable. One night in July, there was a great wind howling outside, creating an eerie whistling noise that echoed outside and around my house. Everyone was asleep. I opened the door. It creaked to my open and made as I made my way across the dark landing, past my sister's and parents' open bedroom doors. The top of the stairs are right next to the bathroom door, and, as one can imagine, are very creepy at night. As I edged closer to the bathroom door, I felt an uneasy tingling at the back of my neck, and felt as if something was approaching me, descending the dark stairs. Now, feeling downright scared, I flicked the bathroom light switch, shot into the bathroom and locked the door, my heart beating fast, trying to forget about it. I plugged in my iPod headphones and put them in my ears and began to listen to music. Near the end of my offloading, the toilet roll on the rack ran out. There is a cupboard where we keep spare toilet roll and towels right beside the door, so I unlocked the door and opened it slightly and reached out. As I grabbed the packet in the outreached hands, my eyes darted to the staircase. The uneasy feeling that I had experienced at the bathroom door returned to me, but grew worse. It was dark already, but something was wrong. Something was out of place. Among the darkness at the top of the stairs, there was a black shadowy mass, a sort of human shape, and it seemed to be staring at me. Almost pissing myself, I closed my eyes and slammed the door shut again. I finished wiping, and my entire body was sweaty and shaking. I stood up and went over to the sink to wash my hands. After wiping them clean and dry, I looked up into the mirror. There, in the bath, was a black mass. It was roughly the same shape as the one I had seen on the stairs. Too horrified to turn round, I stood there frozen, not daring to move. The mass slowly rose from the bath into a standing position. Terrified, I closed my eyes. I felt the air temperature drop around me and felt someone breathing on the back of my neck. Without thinking, I opened my eyes. There, standing right behind me, was an unmistakably human figure, with dripping wet hair, gaunt sunken eyes, and an eerie smile on its face. I felt its hands brush against my arm, as if it was feeling me. It opened its mouth to reveal a set of rotten, broken yellow teeth, and out of the darkness of its mouth, a tongue emerged, or what appeared to be left of it. It was long, ripped in parts, and a sickly yellow-green colour. With a malicious grin on its face, it moved its head next to mine, and I could almost feel its tongue against my skin. The smell was unbearable. I wanted to throw up. Without warning, it stuck its tongue straight into my ear. It felt so horrible that nothing could describe it. Everything around me started to go blurry, and I lost all focus. I found myself on the bathroom floor and felt something warm trickling down my head. From the red spatters on the floor, I could tell I was bleeding. From what I could gather, I must have fainted and hit my head on the edge of the toilet seat. It was still night, as I could still see darkness from under the door, so no one yet knew of my injury. I grabbed a tissue paper and wiped my head, not daring to look back in the mirror. I swiftly flushed the chain and sped back across the hallway to my door. Now, my bedroom door is really hard to open from the outside, as the handle is really stiff. Because of this, I never closed it from the outside. When I got to my door, I realised to my horror that it was closed. Then I got this feeling again. The stairs were creaking, as if someone was walking up them slowly. I turned around and saw the figure again. Now panicking with fear, I desperately scrambled to open my door, but my hands were too sweaty and shaky to open them. The figure was on the landing now, approaching me. I could hear it making a heavy breathing noise that seemed to get faster and faster as it got closer to me. Suddenly, my hand slipped on the handle and opened the door, so I ran inside and hid under my covers for the remainder of the night. I refused to use the bathroom at all after that incident, and rarely left my room. My family tried to talk to me about it, but I refused to divulge the events of the past night. Eventually, due to my lack of eating and using the bathroom, I picked up an illness and was admitted to hospital for treatment. I was placed with a bunch of other people, all who were sleeping in their beds. One patient, however, caught my eye. They had long hair that looked damp and bedraggled, and gaunt sunken eyes. It turned its head and looked at me, putting on an evil smile. Remembering the events of the bathroom, I pulled my cover over my head and tried to sleep. I slept badly that night, but nevertheless, I finally managed to drift to sleep. The next morning, when the nurse was bringing me my breakfast, I asked her who the patient in the bed was that had been looking at me. The nurse gave me a puzzled look and told me that there had been no one in that bed, and people tended to avoid it. When I asked her why, she told me that the last person to occupy that bed had been involved in an unfortunate accident in the ward bathroom, and had drowned in the bath. Realising that the figure I had seen in my house and the one in the hospital were the same, my throat sunk. Was I really seeing a dead person? And what did it want with me? After not visiting the bathroom for such a long time, I really had to go. I walked in the empty, dark hallway at the end of the ward to the bathroom, and went in. There was the bath that figure had drowned in, right next to the toilet. I felt very uneasy as I sat down and did my business, and breathed a sigh of relief when I had finished wiping. I went over to the sink to wash my hands as usual, and glanced into the mirror. The bath seemed to be filling with water, even though the taps were clearly off. I froze on the spot. A dark mass was forming in the bath, and an otherworldly gargling noise was emitting around the room. Suddenly something big and black emerged from the water, splashing water everywhere, including over me. While wiping the water from my eyes, I saw the very same figure that I had witnessed twice before, now standing before me. It climbed out of the bath and approached me. Not wanting to stay in there anymore, I ran, pants still around my ankles, straight through the figure, out of the bathroom, down the hallway past shocked members of staff, and back to the ward. I went home a week later, still badly shaken. My parents had thrown a welcome home party for me, hoping it would cheer me up. The party went well. though I still didn't feel exactly happy. While meeting and thanking the guests at the end of the party, I felt an odd sensation, as if someone was breathing down my neck. I turned round, and right on my face was that unforgettable face. Long, dripping hair, and sunken, dark eyes. Hey guys, I want to say a massive thank you to MrLonelyDark, Ghastly Ghoul, and SpookyBoo for taking part in Collab Week. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. You can also leave a comment below. All feedback, good or otherwise, is always appreciated. If you have any creepy stories of your own, or have any topics that you would like me to cover, feel free to send them in via any of my social media. You can find all links to my social media in the description below. Until next time guys, make sure you lock your doors, stay safe, and I'll see you next video.